During high school, a classmate died in a car crash she was driving. There was no evidence to suggest she was distracted by her phone or anything else, yet shortly afterward, the school held an assembly about distracted driving. They used her as an example, effectively telling the entire school she'd still be alive if she had been paying attention. I studied computer security in college. For an introductory course, we had a project on social engineering. One student decided his project would involve gaining access to a website. He selected a small local business website. Noticed the domain was linked to an email from a local ISP. Called the ISP to reset the password, but hung up when they asked for the last 4 digits of the account holder's SSN. Found the business's phone number and called, pretending to be from the ISP offering 3 months free in exchange for answering a short survey. After asking some random questions, he requested the last 4 of the owner's SSN, which they provided without hesitation. He used that information to call the ISP, reset the email password, log into the account, and request a password reset for the domain registrar. After resetting the domain password, he deleted the email evidence and recorded all his calls while taking screenshots of the process. As he presented his findings, we kept expecting him to say, "I didn't actually do X because it's illegal." But instead, he went through with everything. Finally, the professor stopped him after he admitted to logging into the domain registrar, told him to erase everything, and instructed him never to speak of it again. The professor might have been a bit too lenient, possibly even complicit by telling him to destroy the evidence. Someone in my class once did a book report on the dictionary. The teacher was furious, but we students found it hilarious. The presentation was unforgettable. During a class on violent political revolutions, one student gave a presentation where he repeatedly said, "Pheasant Revolution," instead of "Peasant Revolution." I struggled not to laugh for the entire 15 minutes. There was this anti-vaxxer girl who gave a presentation claiming that vaccines cause autism. She was immediately followed by someone else's presentation debunking that exact claim. It was a bizarre day. In a college Spanish class, we were assigned to talk about our best friend as a way to practice vocabulary. One classmate, however, chose to discuss a friend with benefits instead. During my sophomore year of high school, we had an assignment to bring an object from home and give a presentation about how it represented us. One student brought a knife, not a large one, but still a knife. His presentation was surprisingly well done, but later that same day, he was expelled because of it. I attended a religious elementary school, and one day during an assembly, the religious staff spoke about the importance of prayer and discipline. While one speaker was discussing faith, another interrupted to stress the importance of never losing focus while praying. She went as far as to say that even during a house fire, or if your parents were dying and calling for help, you should not stop praying. I was shocked that she said this to a group of children ranging from 4th to 8th grade. Everyone else seemed unbothered, but I shared my thoughts with a friend about how troubling that message was. Someone overheard me and told her what I said. She called me aside and confronted me. I admitted that I disagreed with one of her points and explained why. She responded that prayer should always come first. I was fortunate she didn't take my criticism too seriously and let it go. However, by the end of our conversation, I realized it wasn't a slip of the tongue, but something she truly believed. During a World War II presentation, a student had just discovered all the cool slide transitions in PowerPoint and used a different one for each slide. The most jarring moment was when they used a flashing heart transition between a slide of a mass grave and a photo of the German dictator. In 4th grade, a girl in my class gave a report on Martin Luther King Jr., saying he was a hero for freeing the slaves. Our school had an anti-bullying campaign that primarily focused on explaining the different methods and types of bullying. Afterward, bullying at the school increased significantly because now students had more knowledge on how to do it. I once did a 4th grade presentation on the science behind how Mountain Dew can dissolve a mouse. Unsurprisingly, some parents were not happy about it. In sophomore year English class, a student was reading his essay aloud when he started stumbling over the words. The teacher recognized the text and realized it had been plagiarized. She pulled up the original essay online and began helping him pronounce the difficult words. The student, oblivious, thanked her and continued reading. Edit. This happened around 2004. The teacher gave the student a day to rewrite his essay. He struggled because the essay contained advanced words he clearly didn't understand. Most other details are fuzzy since it was over 15 years ago. During an abnormal psychology class in college, a student gave a full presentation about how Obama supposedly had bipolar disorder. Her only source? An article from The Onion. A few months ago in my law and entrepreneurship class, we had to create a fake company and present it. 2 class clowns made their project about a drink, and their slogan was, "If she's drunk, she can't say no." Neither of them wanted to read it aloud, but the teacher insisted. Afterward, they were sent back to their seats, and I had never seen anyone look so calm, yet furious. When the class awkwardly began clapping, the teacher stopped them, saying, "This isn't something to applaud." The following week, the 2 students had to go to every class during morning reading time to present a video about consent. Edit. Sorry for my English. I meant teacher, not professor. This happened in high school. In a class, a student once gave a presentation about durian. She brought a small frozen piece as a sample, which gradually thawed throughout the session. The smell became so strong that the professor allowed students to leave the room. Coincidentally, at the same time, a culinary class reported a gas leak, prompting the fire alarm to go off. For the 8th grade talent show, 2 girls performed a song they had written called Mr. Bleddle, dedicated to an attractive young teacher who had recently graduated college. The song was all about how cute they thought he was. Even at the time, it was incredibly awkward, and I'll never forget the uncomfortable look on the teacher's face. He clearly wasn't amused. For a project, we had to create a 5-minute film retelling Hamlet. However, being the overly ambitious group we were, we made a 22-minute movie that even included a commercial break parodying books we had previously read. In our version, Ophelia was a Jersey Shore party girl who wouldn't take her Prozac. Polonius was portrayed as a creepy Greek philosopher, and Hamlet was a moody emo. Sword fights featured video game-inspired Mortal Kombat themes. The class only got to watch the first 5 minutes before we were cut off, but we still received an A. In my first year of college, we had to deliver persuasive speeches on controversial topics for a public speaking class. Thinking I was clever, I argued against seatbelt laws, claiming it should be a personal choice. Toward the end of my speech, a girl suddenly stood up crying and ran out of the room. Her friend explained that she had recently lost someone in a car crash because they weren't wearing a seatbelt. I froze and looked at the professor, who told me to keep going and assured me things like that happen. I think I ended up getting an A or B on the speech. Later, I found out she was friends with some of my friends and occasionally saw her at parties, but I never mustered the courage to apologize. For a Speech 101 assignment in college, we had to pick a children's book and voice all the characters. That was the entire task. One student, however, decided to go all out. He chose a Berenstain Bears book and not only voiced every character, but also acted them out. Watching him crawl around the room pretending to be bears and other animals was so uncomfortable. The performance was poorly done and hard to sit through. In nursing school, a guest speaker addressed our class of about 100 people. He used My Little Pony figures as props and asked us to refer to him by his pony name for the duration of the presentation. I can't recall what it was. He also wore a black leather trench coat, which he never removed, even though the room was quite warm. The whole thing was cringeworthy. Edit. He wasn't a student, but came to speak about his experience with epilepsy and healthcare. Despite the awkwardness, his talk was informative, so I gave him a good review. In high school, a girl from a ridiculously wealthy family gave a presentation arguing that rich people are just as oppressed as everyone else. This was at a public school in Kentucky, where the majority of students were middle class at best. You could practically feel everyone rolling their eyes throughout the room. In psychology class, our final project required us to research a mental illness and present our findings. One group chose necrophilia. Their first slide opened with the phrase, "Let's crack open a cold one." Oh, do I have a story for you? Back in school, we were tasked with designing a project to address environmental issues. This one guy, easily one of the least intelligent people I've ever met, and I don't say that lightly, came up with the idea of flying cars. His reasoning? They'd help the environment because we wouldn't need as much gas, just like airplanes. I sat there in disbelief, wondering what he thought airplanes ran on. Magic fairy dust? A boy in my class around 12 or 13 years old mixed up the words heroic and erotic. When the teacher asked if he had really read an erotic book, he confidently said yes, while the entire class watched in shock. It took the teacher a good 30 seconds to realize the misunderstanding. During college, a student gave a presentation on Nelson Mandela, but kept calling Africans African Americans throughout the entire speech. Compared to some of the other stories here, this one is minor, but it was a group project for a literature class. Our assignment required everyone in the group to have an equal share of speaking time. However, one group member absolutely dominated the presentation. She spent 5 minutes or more on each of her slides, and she had about 5 or 6 slides to herself. Meanwhile, the other group members only had 1 or 2 slides each. She even interrupted their parts to share her thoughts. The look on the professor's face clearly said, "Please, just stop talking already." Every time she spoke,